Welcome back to the shed. I'm going to do something slightly different today, and that is just nap for my own pleasure. As a flint napper many years ago, I started my experimental archaeology career. Moved on to lots of interesting things since then. I'm especially well known for building large reconstructions of traditional dwellings, houses, ceremonial spaces. But actually, this is something that I haven't regularly done for a long time. So I thought I would just sit here. I've got a nice lump of flint, and I'm just going to see what happens in the next half an hour or so. We'll see how long it takes. So enjoy. Let's see what happens. You'll be able to see that I've got rather a stupendous piece of flint. This has been very kindly brought to me by James Dilley, the well-known flint napper and experimental archaeologist, as a gift. I gave him supper. He gave me flint, which I feel like is a pretty good bargain. It's been outside stupidly in this cold weather for a little bit of time, but it's lending itself to hopefully removing some decent flakes and turning those into something. So that's what I'm going to try and do. As I say, hopefully just handle it a bit. I'm going to try and strike something here with a reasonably big hammerstone. Try and take off a decent sized flake. Sounds good. I mean, it does sound good. But it needs to have a decent thwack through there. Let's see what happened. Sounded positive. And there is a beautiful flake. A little bit concave here. But actually, I think we'll just go with that. There's a flaw running through the edge. But let's see what we can do with that one. Let's get rid of this so we don't kill ourselves with it. There we go. So, we got a decent flake. And as I said when I started, I haven't napped regularly for a long time, and I've missed it actually. And just feeling this stone, it's got some lovely inclusions in here, is a real pleasure. There's a flaw running through here, which is a real issue. Clearly runs through there. Let's hope it doesn't go too far into the centre. There's a bit of manganese staining in there. So really my first task is I'm going to use quite a small hammerstone for this to start with, is to just start working around the perimeter. And in the classic case of flint napping, I need to deal with the problem areas first. So all of these flat edges we do not want. So I'm going to hopefully just start working my way along some of these to try and remove those awful flat edges. Oh, there's a massive bit of crystal inclusion there. Don't know if you can see that, but not particularly nice at all. We'll just continue. I mean, look, there we go. So that was that flaw. You can see it there. You can see the weathering inside on that surface. Not a lot I could do about that really. And again, as I'm sure you've seen on many other occasions, flint napping is about contingent thought. It's about being able to solve problems that occur as you go. If we had a perfect material, flint napping would be a lot easier than it is, but we don't have a perfect material. We have flint or stone, and as such, it has inherent flaws, inherent weaknesses. Sometimes it's reasonably rare you come across a piece that's absolutely stunning and does everything you want it to. Sometimes you have to really fight for it, and only time tells on that one. So at this stage, I'm not really thinking about a finished object. I made that mistake for a long time in the past. You know, you'd sit down with a nice piece of flint, what you thought was a nice piece of flint. You'd attempt to extract an incredible tool from it. And then, of course, the flint would teach you otherwise. Teach you to be less arrogant in your assumptions. And so it took me quite a long while, actually, to realize that the first thing you can do, almost the only thing you can do, is to solve all of the problems on any given piece of stone. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm just turning it, making sure that anything that's really awkward and nasty is gone. So I'm just working down on this piece of cortex here. I really don't want it there. I don't want that flat edge for eating into the center with a soft hammer later. So I'm literally just working around, and what will happen is I'll end up with a relatively random shape, but hopefully a shape where most of the initial issues are removed. And once that's done, we can then start thinking about an actual tool. So you can see here the floor is doing something strange in there. We'll come on to that later. But the first thing I want to do really is get rid of the platform. So there's the point of percussion. That's where my hammerstone landed initially. You can see the lovely bulge of percussion as the shockwave shot through the stone. But I want this all gone, so I'm going to work at it from both corners inwards and see what we can do. So we're after just working, trying to get rid of all of those problem angles, those abrupt, ooh, that was pretty nasty. Something awful going on in here, but we're continuing. We're going to just try and work this piece of flint till we get something. So let's continue. And hopefully we'll end up with something. Apologies for the snorts and the sniffly nose. It's that time of year. Everyone is sick in some way. Understandable. It's a bit better. Working across that surface, trying to just work down that bulb a bit. This is pretty awful. In fact, I think I might go in there slightly more heavily with a soft hammer straight away. Let's try and solve some of this. So I'm going to try and take off this lump here if I can. And in order to do that, I need to create quite a decent platform here. I'm struggling a bit at the moment with a lack of good abrasive stones. Somewhat limited in my hammer selection, my grinders. But let's see if we can get a piece of antler on here and do something nice right through there. Support it on the leg and well, we knew it was a problem, but actually that chunk is gone and the floor that was running from it has gone as well. So although it probably looked a bit catastrophic, I'm reasonably happy with that. We had to solve it in some way at this point. It's not like we could let that run and run. So what we'll do now is we're going to try and work down this ridge by creating a very strong platform there for a soft hammer to land on. Stronger the better, really. Slightly tricky, this bit. There we go, that should work. Turn that over. You can see my platform there. Try and support the tool as we give that a bit of welly. And that worked pretty well. Actually, to be honest, it missed the ridge a bit. It sort of went more into the center of the stone, but we've still got options there. So let's try that again down that ridge. It's fascinating. I mean, I've written a lot in my time about stone tool manufacture, done a fair bit of research, lots of butchery experiments and use wear experiments, seeing how the tools actually wear and polish. But it's always fascinating to me as I do this, the complexity of thought that's required, because I'll try and take that flake right through there. So yeah, so we've removed that strange flaw in the bulb. There's still a pretty awful bit here which I need to solve. No point in continuing without solving that, so I'm going to do a bit of that now, see if we can eke into there. And work our way across. So at this stage, as I've said, I'm not thinking really about a finished tool. I'm thinking about that floor still running there. It's a bit annoying. Still thinking about just getting rid of problem areas. When problem areas are truly well and gone, then I can have the luxury of considering a tool shape. Now, it's difficult to know really in the past how our ancient ancestors would have considered this. I suspect they would have thought in the same way, because as I've said already, we're not talking about a perfect material here. And even if the material was perfect, we're also dealing, of course, with our own inaccuracies as humans. We're not robots. We try and hit on a particular point, but that comes down to a huge amount of practice, hand-eye coordination, and it's not always possible to hit on exactly the point you would like to. And that, of course, creates errors in the work that we're trying to undertake. So we end up, as I've said, really trying to solve problems. There we go, that was quite nice, running through there. Solve problems that we're creating ourselves as we go. It's not ideal. And it's the exact opposite to a pursuit like sculpture, for example, where, well, certainly in clay, where you're adding material and building it up, and you can sort of peel stuff off and put stuff back on. This is far more akin to sort of masonry, I suppose. Is once it's off, you can't put it back on. So everything we're trying to do is within that notion that a mistake has to change the entire outcome sometimes of what we intended to do in the first place. So really the sort of finished tool idea, it sort of ends up being something that's quite flexible in the brain. You're trying to sort of maybe set out with a notion of something you want to make, but will the material allow it? There we go. Starting to get rid of this issue. I'm trying to be careful around this floor. Can you see it there? It's doing lots of strange things, but really we've reached the point where I'm just going to have to attack that quite aggressively. So I'm going to grind off that edge. And try and hit that with a decent amount of force. Any appearance or resemblance at this stage to a tool that you might recognise is entirely coincidental, because actually, as I say, I'm going to try and hit through here. Decent strike, let's get it off. Yeah, so that was that flaw. And that's created some issues. It's sort of over-thinned the tool, really. And just to prove, you can see it's sort of like flake has done strange things. I mean, I might have slightly overstruck it as well, but we've got rid of a section of the floor. We need to get rid of this bit. It's also very crystalline in there, and our tool is going to end up being very thin, but we're going to carry on. That's what this is about. This is about me napping, you watching. I'm sure some of you watching this will be able to do better than I am, and some of you won't. So let's just see. I'll try and hit this. Let's get rid of that chunk there. That's a bit better. Let's come back, and then we've just got this little awful bit here, which again, let's just try and get rid of this to finish. And then really, that's a fair bit of the initial work done. Let's do that. Just through there. Let's see. Yeah, reasonably happy with that. So we've got our rough out, what I would call a rough out, and you'll notice not taken any care of the edges as yet. Sort of slightly flattened section here, but I'm not worried about that. That should come off with a decent soft hammer strike. This side is still a little bit abrupt, but again, I think soft hammer can deal with that. So that is our blank. It's quite thin, but the starting flake was quite thin. So really at this stage, I can, if I dare to, start thinking about some sort of finished form. But even at this stage, let's say I was imagining a biface coming out of here, something in there, I would still, rather than working on the easy bits and bringing this edge back to some sort of working cutting edge, I still have to tackle the problem areas first as I go. So really, the first problem area is this ridge running through here. So we're going to try and have a proper go at that. So I'm going to grind off this corner, make it nice and strong. And then hopefully with a decent strike through there, down that edge, we might be able to get some of that off. Let's see what happens. Ooh, a little bit iffy. Oh, blew it. There we go. Something felt slightly strange on that. Just wasn't having it. But it's not over yet. We've got a new flat bit. I'm going to keep going. This is flint napping. And we'll come at it from a different angle. Now, if I'd finished the rest of the tool into something beautiful and then come back to that at the end, we would have basically destroyed a tool. So it's really worth tackling these hard bits first. You're just fooling yourself otherwise. Okay, so working around, grinding as I go. Probably do with a slightly smaller soft hammer. There we go. And then we'll come back onto there. That's nicer. There we go. What you'll notice is that often any flint knapper will stop and reconsider where they are and what they need to achieve next. It really is a sort of cognitive game, I suppose, flint knapping. That's why I enjoy it so much, I think, is that it's a sort of three-dimensional puzzle. So we've got this flat bit here, which I need to deal with now. Otherwise, it'll be too easy to leave and come back at a later stage when everything else is looking quite nice. Just going to come through there. And then hopefully come back through here. Turning it, so I'm kind of working in from both corners onto this flat bit, just trying to strike at a slight angle, just trying to get the last of that bit gone. Oh, there we go. It's nearly there, and then hopefully, although it's not pretty, we've got rid of that area. So we reassess. So this is the blank now. Still pretty wavy, still pretty thin, to be fair. Some minor issues here, but that can be dealt with. So again, I'm going to start again and start considering now some sort of finished shape. It's obviously running through there, some sort of ovate hand axe, I suppose, biface, worked on both sides. And so really what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start looking at these sinuous edges, and where a zigzag runs too far to one side, I'm going to strike it on that side to bring that edge back. I'm just going to start aligning these edges. And if we can do that well enough, we'll start getting quite nice shapes. So through there on that low point, and there, and there. Okay, we've got some rough stuff going on here, so let's try and have a go at that. I feel like it's almost time for a cup of tea. We'll do that soon. Have a bit of an assessment through there. That's pretty good. Through here. Just working through there. That's getting there. So you can see already it's not ideal. Some of this harder cherty flint has kind of crushed a bit on the edges, but you can see my edge is becoming straighter as we go. It's a much better edge. This still needs a fair bit of work, which I'll do now. And let's see what we can bring it back to. That's all right. As I say, I used to nap a lot. I mean, I napped for years consistently, and also in Southern Africa did lots of experiments with blade production on opalines, very small nuggets of incredibly beautiful semi-precious stones that were typical of the Middle Stone Age in Southern Africa. But my first love will always be flint. So I'm hoping now this is reaching the sort of final stages of production. It's quite thin, and I'm just working my way around these edges, just trying to make sure we've got some sort of symmetry going on. You can see here, for example, that this edge wanders that way too much. So what I'm going to do is just strike from this side, and that will bring the edge back. I'll try and show you what I mean. So let's just get a nice little blow through there, and one through there. And hopefully literally just brushing the edge of the flint with the soft hammer. You see that's come back online slightly. Now, the nasty bit. Let's see if we can make that slightly better. I'm going to do a bit of grinding here because that's looking pretty nasty. So we want to come off that side. Yeah, so I knapped for many years, and then experimental archaeology took me off into other directions. And for those of you who know me, for many years I've been specializing in designing education programs for heritage centers and in building large-scale construction projects with volunteers. So really, my focus on this sort of activity, this sort of pastime, has dropped. And like many things in life, I wish it hadn't. I've missed it. So this is my chance to kind of get back into it. There we go. That was a nice one. Okay, so there's a little bit of issue on this edge. I don't know whether you can see, but there's a sort of crystal inclusion going on there, which is quite awkward. This might ruin the whole thing, but I'm going to try and get rid of that. Incredibly, that worked. Got a bit of a step fracture down there. And going to now focus on the butt of the tool. You can see the line wanders, the edge wanders that way. So I've got to strike it that way to bring the edge back. So I'm going to try and eke in there a little bit. I'm going to work on this corner first, because that'll give me a bit of room to come back. And hopefully through there. That's a bit better. There we go. Let's see. Well, apologies for that brief technical interlude. Something went wrong with the camera, I apologise. But I've reached a stage, unfortunately you missed a bit, through no fault of your own. Effectively, I've sort of reached the end of the tool here, and you'll probably notice a dramatic change in the shape. I lost the tip. It was actually looking quite nice up here. I lost the tip. Soft hammer shot that went wrong. I was trying to take what's called a tranché flake off the tip to make a razor sharp filleting edge. It failed. And like you've seen earlier in this video, again, going back to that contingent thought, correcting mistakes, trying to keep the tool working, it's all part of that process. It's just a shame you didn't see it, actually, because I might have sworn. Anyway, so this is the tool, I suppose, to finish, to give this video some sort of finish, is that after that initial flake, which was quite a nice but slightly overly thin flake, I've managed to produce what we would refer to as an ovate biface, an ovate hand axe biface. And so what we're looking at is it's quite thin, it's not overly finished, and again, all of the tools I make, they always have a function in mind. So I'm never making tools to go on a wall in a nice glass case as a presentation piece. I'm always making tools with a view to my previous experience of things like butchery and other practical tasks with them. So actually, this is a functional tool. I know it is. I've used and made tools like this on many occasions. So it's got a sort of reasonably sinuous edge for skinning some sort of animal. It's got some straighter edges for filleting, for cutting blocks of meat. And actually it fits nicely in the hand. It's a decent weight. A little bit light actually, potentially, but that's, again, that starting flake. But hopefully you've enjoyed this brief video where I've just taken a bit of time to work a piece of flint. Thanks for watching. See you soon.